Welcome to Podcasters Row. King of Podcasts here with you. Been a little bit light on the interviews, but what I did get to do was I got to get a chance to talk to the folks at the Proactive Podcast. So tables are turned tonight as I present this episode where I'm not necessarily talking to the guests about their podcast, is that they decided to go and have me on theirs. So I was featured on the Proactive Podcast. Hosts are Richard Sharratt, Arthur Van Dam, and Dr. Tina Coopersmith, who moderates the panel. And I talked to them about my work in podcasting and what motivates me to do the podcast work that I do on a regular basis. So I hope you get some takeaways from it and you like what you hear. So take a listen to my appearance on the Proactive Podcast here on Podcasters Row.
Why don't you start us off on how did you get into podcasts, since you did this before people even probably knew the word podcast?
Well, when it comes to podcasting, radio was my first love, and it's always still been my first love, but it's really just a change of environment. When I first got into college, we had not gotten to, we were already starting to see the change where radio stations were being picked up, and there's a lot more deregulation, a lot more companies being able to buy radio stations, and less local radio stations, less smaller owned radio stations were out there. It's corporate America that changed the radio landscape. And, in 1996, we had the Telecommunications Act that President Clinton signed, which further went and deregulated and made it where, any radio company could go ahead and buy whatever they wanted. And it doesn't matter if they had TV stations. It was just a lockstep. And then after that, by the time I graduated, you had the likes of Clear Channel Communications owning an odds of like 800 radio stations, which is a big chunk. You have I think over 10,000 radio stations in the country. And for them to go and have such a large chunk of that and of the largest, most powerful signals there are, some of the most listened to radio stations. So the market changed. And then, as it continued to go along, stations were being brought in. And here's the thing. The management will come in. They'd have the radio people running the stations and operating it until they learn how the formats and all the programming goes. And basically, they've been on the end of like, well, we're just going to go ahead and just sell it off. And even today, iHeartRadio now that was originally Clear Channel, the Mays family, Lowry Mays, Randall, the family, they bought all those stations and they've been in debt ever since. And every other company that's been a part of them has taken over that debt. Radio is not like it was anymore. The industry I wanted to be in, the creativity that I wanted to be in, to enjoy, having, theater of the mind, be able to go and say what you want, even if it was within, regulations of the FCC. It was fun to have all that. But you know what? I never got a chance to be a part of it. And, I got into radio anyway with Clear Channel. I was with them from 94 to 98. And, by that point, it's doldrums in there. Like, there's one thing where the sales department is bright. They have nice new furniture and everything like that because they're taking all the money. But the initiative for the programming, they have old furniture, old offices because, they took everything from the other radio stations and put it into one building and all these big, gray draped, covered walls. And then, like, the equipment's nice. And then they have the automation. But, you could still do great radio, but they're not allowed to. The management had a certain directive of how they can go and run their programming, limited and censored and controlled. So the amount of time you could talk, it used to be that the DJs could talk or the hosts could talk more than the advertising. But now the advertising takes up much more time. That's all there's to it.
So that for a creative guy like you, since we've talked before, that must have like sunk you, right?
Because I did college radio, and that freedom to go from that to being completely restricted and not even getting a chance to move my way up the door, I went and applied everywhere in radio. I got into Clear Channel, on a whim because I really tried hard to get in there. But by the time I was getting out, I just saw a monster.com ad, and it was for the company I'm with now. And they were looking for a program director for an internet radio station. Like, all right. I didn't know if I would get it, but like it was something interesting to me, and I had experience, and I got in.
Who better than you, though? I mean, you did it in college, right? Where'd you go to college?
Florida Atlantic University.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
I got to learn a lot from, and for me, more than a degree, I got to learn from the radio station because I got to go and work on programming. I worked on a section of the programming that was on the station because it was a kind of a free form, different formats. And again, the 90s was a great time for music. A lot of genres out there, a whole lot of micro segmenting of what music was out there or talk. Got to work on sports. I got to talk to record companies. I got to learn the business of radio. And I still apply it today. But I had to take a step back when I went to Clear Channel. You know, the idea of working in a corporate atmosphere. I worked in local TV news as well before that for the Hearst Corporation. They had an ABC affiliated station. That was the first job out of college. All that corporate mindset of like, well, you know, you're only going to get this much money, 6% a raise every year if you know, when you get your evaluation. At Clear Channel, they never raise your pay. You might get great benefits, but the pay would be, some people would be there 20 years and had never gotten a bump in pay. The same amount of money being paid all the time. That's commonplace over there. Unless you are contracted or you have an agent and you run a morning show or some prominent format, and you know, you make sure you keep a deal that keeps coming in and you renegotiate. But you know, those days
I
are gone.
guess what you're saying, excuse me for interrupting,
Sure.
is it's reminding me of way back when Howard Stern was one of the first folks who left standard radio to go to satellite radio so he wouldn't be muzzled.
Right.
So it sounds like you decided you were the corporate structure for you was a little bit controlling.
Yeah.
And you found a new medium, right? And just the way news is now social media. So we went into the podcast space. So for you to be more expressive and creative, can you explain to our listeners and stuff, now that you're in this space, how has it allowed you to be creative and to live a more productive and produce more in your life and make your life that much better?
When I first came into podcasting, it was what we called audio archiving because everything was being streamed live. And, you know, it was a make a big deal, you know, if you have a DSL connection to get, you know, 128 kilobytes of an MP3 stream that you can get somebody to listen to or something a little bit less. But everything was done live. But the one thing we were making sure to do was record everything and hold on to it. We didn't know what we were going to do with it. But, you know, something happened where just like, you know, when you look at music, you look at television, the DVR mentality. You know, when TiVo comes around, people start thinking, well, that on-demand idea sounds really good. And that's exactly what this is. It's streaming radio, but it's now on demand. So you don't have to go and listen to the show live. You can hit it record, you know, put it back together, and then go on and do whatever. I mean, for me, it was great because I still got to do radio. Like, I still played commercials. I got to create great commercials. You know, some of the things we do in terms of promoting ourselves and marketing ourselves, it was with a mom and pop company. So husband and wife that's been running this operation ever since I've been here. And it's a small outfit. They wanted creativity. They wanted to foster creativity. They both came from broadcasting. You know, the wife came from the sales side. The husband came from the programming side and the, you know, production side. And just, they knew they want to have something where it's larger than life. They wanted epic. So
that's great.
Had the room.
George, tell me how you create your podcasts and make them great. What do you do? What do you suggest for podcasters like us or other folks? How do you make a great radio show, and how do you make a great podcast? And how does that make a great life?
For me, the best podcasters out there have a sense of what radio was like. So, you know, all the good podcasters that are out there for the most part, they all have an idea of, if you ask them, you know, what people from the radio that hosted talk programming or music programming, who are the people that you look up to? I could give you a bunch of names that I have. And the thing was, I take from them the way they present themselves, the way they, you know, inflect, what they talk about, how they entertain. And the one thing is, you know, if you're good at public speaking, that's the first thing you could do to help yourself be a good podcaster. You learn how to pregnant pause instead of make yourself go and ah. You try not to stutter over words. When I coach hosts now for programming, I have to teach them that first thing. Like, one of the things I got to do now is I have to scrub down the audio. So every time they have an imperfection, I have to take it out for them. But the intent is I want them to learn how not to do that. Because if I hear
how do you teach them how to do that?
Well, part of it is it's through time. I think the best way to do it is listen to yourself back. Because that was something I had a problem with. When I started doing my own podcasting, I was still kind of like stuttering along and not perfectly well, inflection and everything like that. I could do voiceovers that are controlled within 1, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. But to do a radio show, I need to go ahead and learn to also listen to myself and hear myself. Man, I am stuttering all over the place. It sounds horrible. And I felt myself cringing. And I listened to myself over and over. Really, the best podcasting is you go back and listen to what you did.
It's so funny that you say that, because I'm in several groups for various reasons. And one guy says, listen to yourself over and over like football players watch videotape of how they play and how the opponent plays, right? So to be a better speaker, watch yourself and watch others, right?
Yeah.
And then have coaches. I know in my coaching group, we actually have one person. We divide it up. So somebody goes over your vocal styling, someone goes over your body language, and someone counts your filler words and your false starts. Right. And so you're constantly, and everything gets taped and recorded.
Yeah.
So I like what you're saying. and it's about watching. The more you do something, what do you say, Richie? Practice makes permanent.
Practice makes permanent. I mean, my question to you, George, is, you've got a wealth of experience. You are literally probably one of the first people to do podcasts. You said 2005.
Right.
Why am I not seeing you on places like YouTube with videos, teaching people like us who, in reality, we're newbies to the podcast world? Why am I not seeing you doing that? Because I think, I listened to you and we've done a podcast together not too long ago. And you've got great information, great advice. So what's stopping you from doing that? Or is that something that you've tried before? Or is it something that you want to try in the future?
Because when I first started, it's me doing all the production. I'm behind the scenes all the time. I never put myself in front of the microphone. I wanted to, but I was always more in the music radio. I wasn't really so much into talk radio. I enjoy it immensely, but I wasn't the person that thought I could be the talk show host. And, when 2012 happened, that's when I decided, I had the wherewithal, the means, I could go ahead and be an independent podcaster. And the most important thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do it on my own. I didn't want to have help or the benefit of the network that I'm working for. I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to do it organic by myself. The Sagittarius in me, that's just the way I operate. I didn't want to have any benefit or here are all these friends of mine that listen to the programming. I didn't want it that way. I wanted to go ahead and create something of my own. And the other thing was I could also learn what worked and what didn't work that I could apply to the full-time, to the networks I'm working on. Because I needed to go and apply what I teach other people on how to host. I needed to go ahead and show that I could do the same thing. But I also wanted to go and do what I wanted to talk about best. For me, I was going to be confident and comfortable if I had a topic that I felt really good about. That was the other thing, too. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. Professional wrestling, I had watched for years. That's the first thing I decided to do. And what I actually did in 2012, I gave myself 3 test shows. I did one that was on the media that was kind of the idea I wanted to do. Another one on wrestling, another one was something else. And I didn't really think what it was. But I did 3 test shows. And all of them I said, I'm going to do wrestling. I'm going to start with that first and go with it. And, I didn't even get that much of marketing. I wasn't getting that much traction for a couple of years. It wasn't until I reached out to a couple other shows of doing wrestling podcasts that I got a little bit of a following, and that was fine. I never got a large following like right now. I might get 3,000, 4,000 downloads on all my platforms every month of everything that I do. But I'm not worried about the audience in terms of trying to grow this audience out and try to monetize so much. I can make a little bit, but I enjoy it. For me, I enjoy doing this. I also like the fact that I wanted to do a wrestling podcast initially and the other podcasts because nobody was talking about what I wanted to talk about. There was a void. And so for me, I also don't like when people are talking softball and they're just kind of mealy mouth. They're not giving me anything. Where's my takeaways? Why am I listening to you for 30 minutes or an hour? Give me something. So for me, I want to make sure that I'm not sounding like everybody else. I got an independent, distinct voice, and I'm going to come out here. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and, but also know that I'm not going to try to just create rage bait or clickbait. I want to just go ahead and give good information. I want to not belittle the listener. I think of them as smart, educated, informative, and if they're going to listen to me, they know, okay, you're going to hear me, you're going to get something good. because I
So
can't.
what's the best piece of information that you've given your audience since 2012? I mean, you're talking a long time, right? Or information.
Well,
plural.
honestly, I think I've been exposing the radio business for a long time, and the reason I'm saying it too is because I'm not here to be negative about it. I'm trying to be constructively critical, because I'm waiting for a day when the radio business comes back to the way it is. Because right now, you have a lot of debt-laden companies. They're all owned by venture capital, private equity firms, letting them hold on to their debt. You can go look at the stories, but there's not enough radio press out there. The worst part is the radio industry that I love, nobody was going to have the guts to go and talk about this. They will not say anything because they all have to go ahead and play nice. Even with wrestling, all these other podcasters out there, God bless them. Hey, thanks for doing what you do. But they also want to go and get close to the wrestlers. They want to be in the fandom. I'm not into that. Like, I'm not worried about having hosts on. Okay, I mean, for me, it's not about the fame or the fortune. It's not about that. It's the content I care about. Like, I'm still a producer at heart, and I care about. I mean, one of the shows I do on the networks. Okay, we have one of the networks I work in full-time, Cannabis Radio. I do 2 shows there. Now, of those shows, 5,000 to 10,000 downloads a month. And the one thing I don't do, I never say who I am. Those 2 shows, I never say, hello, this is your host, I'm your host. Never. If the guest says something, George Brasco, okay, great. But I don't say it because it's not for me. And the shows have done good. I think it's probably a testament to the fact that people listen to it, because I am going on really, tough on the industry. I'm lecturing these people, and I'm not even in the business. I don't even make $1 off what they make. I'm not even in the operations, but I can read and I can see what's going on here. I'm enough of a commentator and enough of a study.
Stopped.
That's where I'm going to pay attention to. I'm like, I'm going to get in here and start, taking care of it.
Richie, the recording stopped.
What I hear you're saying, and I'm trying to summarize for the listeners a little bit, is you love radio, you love podcasting, and love what you do because you're being you, you're being authentic, and you're living your life as you.
Yeah.
And you're encouraging people to follow their path and to, stay connected to who they want to be and not be guided by large monolithic corporations per se.
But I'll tell you this too, Dr. Tina. One of the things that's really empowering and really wonderful for me is that, for me, it's like I don't keep a whole lot of friends that would be able to go and talk about these kind of things. I don't have anyone to talk about wrestling or the media or even talk about dating culture and society and relationships and all that. But I look at all this stuff and like, well, I'd love to be able to talk about this. I research and I'm like, well, I'd love to talk about it, but who's going to listen to me? Like, the podcasting gives me a chance to go ahead and it's a cathartic experience. I get to go and talk to people about what I like, and somebody's going to listen. I know there's some feedback out there, but at least if I have something off my chest, I get to say it on the air. Like, I like that better than just
You're being authentically you and sharing you with the world.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a cool place if everybody felt entitled to have their voice heard in some way, shape, or form, even if it was at a dinner, right? So I think that's a really nice, brilliant value in a sense.
Well, you know what? Some of the best podcasting, Arthur, I'm going to follow up on again, just when you were asking what's the best thing I've ever done for podcasting is, or the podcasters can do, is you show who you are. Like, the one thing is, you're going to be a host on here. Don't just have an interview with somebody and don't include yourself in the conversation. Like, I do like a little bit of, if you're some of the people I have, they're experts, okay? They're clinicians, they're medical professionals, they're business owners, Fortune 500, whatever. I want you to talk. You're part of this conversation too. You're just as important. You're an equal to your guest. And more important to me is I want to be able to go ahead and one of the programs I talk about, when I talk about dating and society relationships, I talk about myself. I'm not afraid of being personal about what happened to me. I'll talk about my daily life and the kind of issues that I have. But my reason for that show, called The Praise and the Botchers, is because of the fact that I don't want some of the younger people that listen to the program to take the same path. Like, I feel bad for young people around. Young adults are not unable to get in love or date, and some of the things that are being told to them that social media is directing them to do. Like, that's the part, like, somebody has to come in and say something. And I want to say something.
I understand. I know that feeling. In my industry, I want to change my industry. So
tell us about King of Podcasts. How'd that come about? What's the theme? What are you trying to do? You have this great spirit, George, and a freeing spirit that you want to share and enlighten people. So how did that one come up, and what's that doing now?
So King of Podcasts, think of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Remember he used to talk to the king of movies? That's it.
Nope.
Oh, no, King of Cartoons. That's right, King of Cartoons. So
nope.
While I was a kid, I was watching Pee-wee's Playhouse, right? When I was a teenager, and that was one of the segments that was on there. I was like, oh, you know what? And then I was also thinking there was a place that I used to remember when I visited my grandparents. There was a brake shop, and the guy's name was Mito, King of Brakes. For something about King of worked, and I was like, well, all right. And I looked and see, okay, for SEO, would King of Podcasts be out there? Nobody has it. So I took it, and I was like, you know what? I could probably take that claim. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit, braggadocious for me to go ahead and take that name and say that I am, but I think I am. I think in the time I've done this, I think I'm pretty much, I can claim it, and I can back it up.
I think so. I've heard you. We're fortunate to be on your guest, and this is an amazing interview. Now, what about WMR-FM? What is that?
So, originally was called webmasterradio.fm, and, it's amazing. That network is tech-based. Digital marketing, affiliate marketing, search engine optimization, blogging, social media. I mean, we were in the forefront of all the changes that were going on with tech anyway, because we were there for the advent of social media and all the changes that came with it. All the little sites that came along before Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all this took over and changed everything forever. And the other thing was, I can claim that, we had a lot of big companies that got to work with us. Like, for instance, I don't know anybody else that could say in the media that they had advertising from Google, Yahoo, and Bing, because they all hosted programming with us. They all advertised with us. So we had them on there to go and do that. I can tell you that we got to work with the New York Times, the Dow Jones, Adobe. There's a lot of clients that came on board that are tech now that you hear about today, BubbleFast and AccuQuote, and GoDaddy was part of us too. Like, we had all of that going on. PR Webs was a very prominent, PR service that worked with us. We had a show that were hosting with us. The Public Relations Society of America. Some of the people we had on were like some of the biggest ad agency types in the world. Some of the people we had on, I got to work with Larry Weber Shandwick, and then after that was RacePoint Group. He is the person that created the Got Milk campaign. Big deal. And here's the other thing too. Webmasterradio.fm in 2004, Yahoo launched us. And for the longest time, we've had a purple background in our logo and in all our websites and all of our materials, because Yahoo was what we appreciated. We liked the Yahoo purple. And they sponsored our first event in Las Vegas at the Palms Hotel Casino, 2004. I don't know anybody else can make that claim, but that's what happened. We put a lot of events together. We would go to all these major digital marketing shows, whether it was Ad Tech or the PRSA or Search Engine Strategies, all these different shows. And it was great to go ahead and go around the country and put out events. And that was just a fun time. It was all talking about tech. Everybody that we had in the space, felt like it was kind of an easy transition for people to go ahead and they go and speak all the time at different conferences. Well, here's a weekly platform for you. We'll take care of everything for you. And even at that time of podcasting, we were using phone calls. We were using, we didn't have Skype or we didn't have Zoom or anything like that before. We were just using phones back in the day.
So is it fair to say that you have structured your life successfully, something which I'm aspiring to do, to have fun all the time?
I think so. I just wish I got paid more. But radio is a cruel mistress. And I still say radio because, I say podcasting is radio 2.0. And then, Bob Pittman, the CEO of iHeartMedia, says radio is podcasting is radio's birthright. They want to take claim of it, but the thing is that the spirit of radio remains in podcasting. Because think about it today. If you hear Joe Rogan or, Caller Daddy and all these other shows that are out there, anything on NPR, there's a reason why NPR is so successful. And I give them all the credit in the world, because all their shows resonate perfectly for podcasting. And I even say NPR doesn't even need the FM AM signals. They could drop all those towers and just work on podcasting, and they're doing great. They don't need to do anything else. They're the top 20 podcasts of any particular platform, and they're doing a great job. But everybody else we know, there's something about what you do in radio. You think about this, people that were emceeing game shows or large, award shows and things like that. People came from radio. It's just, how to be master ceremonies. You know how to, produce programming, host, and you get the format of, you want to do 2-3 hours and you want to keep people engaged. And you have these longer conversations that radio would restrict you from because of the time constraints. Well, this is just a larger form, but it's radio in its sense. Same thing.
So that's awesome. I love it. Now, earlier you sent us a note saying that proactivity to lessen stress and stay ahead. How can our members, listeners embody that and live their best life?
For all the work that I do, I'm always planning ahead. I'm always trying to go and figure out what I can do I don't want to wait till things at the last minute. On all my podcasting, all my work, if I have a plan in place that I have to take care of a project and I have so much time to get it done, I'm going to jump on it quickly because I want to have leverage. I want to have some room to work with and have a little bit of time to let everything breathe out. So, for instance, I've had to do conference planning for the company I work with. We were hosting, 2-3 day conferences. First day, premium sessions, 10 sessions, all 8 to 5 in one room or whatever, and setting it all up and getting all the people organized and the content set together. And the same thing going for the 2 days of sessions. Three rooms. You have other things going on aside from the exhibition, but like the programming itself, the tracks, setting all that up. I need to jump on that quickly. I'm not going to wait to the last minute and say, oh my God, all these sessions are done. And I'm going to be racing and scrambling to the end. My problem is my anxiety would just go over to the roof if I let that happen. And there is within reason, because obviously there's sometimes that time will not allow it because you got to wait on somebody else. But at least I'm going to get my end of the work done.
That's amazing. So sounds like you make a game plan, right?
Absolutely. Everything
knows how to do that.
Yeah. Always, and always have a plan B. I'm always setting up, okay, whatever I got to do, give me a spreadsheet, give me the setup, just give me the input I need so I can go ahead and execute the plan. And for the most part, I also like to trust in myself. I always had the hardest problem of delegating because I wanted to be able to control what was going on, because I know if I have to go and bring in teams and try to get something done, it doesn't work. Like right now, in my current setup, we used to have 3-4 hour meetings, like maybe once a month, every other couple of months. And honestly, we really never got anything done. Now, in my company, we do one meeting on Mondays at 10 a.m., like clockwork, and maybe half hour to an hour. Let's just boom, 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 boom. It's all done. Okay, here's where we're at. Okay, thanks. And it's just much easier. Like, we don't need to go ahead and just do a whole lot of brainstorming. Like, get the ideas, let them come in as they go, but somebody has to come in and administrate. So if I'm in control of what's going on, great. But in the corporate environment, that wasn't going to be allowed. And, you're not going to be able to have the creativity of say, okay, I can trust my own judgment and know, okay, if I want to bring somebody on to host a track, for cannabis radio, we were doing events called the USCC, United States Cannabis Conference and Expo. And I used the radio format. I used all the content that we had on the network to plan the education. And then also to take the people we wanted to go and bring on and speak at the events. And I had enough time to go and learn that. I remember the first time they tried to assign me that, and I crashed and burned really quickly in like a day. So they took it off of me. And then I went back again, and I was ready for it this time. And again, proactivity works for me. If I can stay ahead and always just have like an idea, we're going to do another conference. I was like already still planning on that. Because I also know that in my business, I've been in the company 20 years. I almost know how they're going to operate. When they say they're going to do something, okay, then I need to plan for this. Like I can already tell what's happening. I got to get something ready. And so I'll even sometimes, before they even task me on something, it's done. Because I'll know what they're going to ask. It's like I already know 2 steps ahead of them. Because I have to.
So sounds so lovely, George, and I don't mean to cut you off, but we're running on time. So I want to summarize a lot of what you said for our listeners. Includes be yourself, choose a life where you like to, where your work is almost your play. So, you're doing it because you really want to do it. Have a plan, have a backup plan, be organized, be scheduled, and keep growing. Is that a good summary?
Yeah. No, until you get there, you know, the thing is we all have to go and work at some places. We have to go and do something until we get the freedom to do what we want. So the other thing is, if you can't get there yet, find a way to get there. Find the escape route. What are you going to do? Like, you know, here's your money, here's your passports, here's whatever. Like, you know, like a secret agent. You have an escape plan. You have a way out.
Okay. So you have a goal of plan A and plan B. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today and your wisdom.
Thank you.
Activators, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'd like to thank our guest, George, for coming on with his amazing insights. Please support George. Check out his links. They will all be in the show notes, the web, the social media, all his podcast channels. Remember that our podcast drops every Monday at 9 a.m. Please subscribe. Please share with your friends. Please drop us a review. And until next time, remember, time is your most valuable resource. So get proactive, be productive, and ensure you produce your very best life.
And that's going to do it for Podcasters Row. Thank you for listening to the program. I hope to come back with new interviews coming up very soon, but please be patient and come back for the next episode. We'll talk to you next time.